You're sitting somewhere quiet right now. Maybe it's late. Maybe everyone else in the house is asleep. Or maybe you're alone entirely, which is its own kind of late, and you have your phone or your screen. And something about those words, unbothered, people think you know something, landed somewhere specific in your chest. Not because it sounded cool, because it described something you have wanted for a very long time without ever being able to name it out loud. Let me try to name it. There is a person in your life, maybe several. And when something goes wrong, when plans fall apart, when someone is rude to them, when they don't get what they wanted, they react loudly, visibly. They text 6 people. They bring it up 3 days later. They carry it in their face. And you watch this, and you feel 2 things at once. The first thing is compassion, genuine compassion. You feel bad for them. The second thing, the one you would never say, is a quiet, private wish. You wish you could just not do that. You wish that the things that seem to detonate inside other people would somehow just pass through you. Not because you don't feel. You feel everything. But because somewhere you learned that reacting costs you something you can't afford to keep paying. That's the real wish, isn't it? Not to feel less. To pay less. And here's what nobody has told you yet. The thing that every article and every productivity video skipped straight past. The reason you want this so badly is not because you're trying to be cool. It's not aesthetics. It's not a personality trait you're chasing. It is because you are exhausted. Genuinely, quietly, privately exhausted from the amount of internal energy it takes to process the world at the volume you process it. And you have watched certain people move through the same world at a fraction of the cost. And you want to know how they do it. And you have suspected for a long time that they are not doing something you don't know. You have suspected that they have stopped doing something. Something you are still doing. Something no one has ever pointed to directly and said that, right there, that is the thing. I'm going to point to it tonight. But first, I need you to stay with me for a moment, because I need to tell you something that most videos would skip. I need to tell you about the glass. Imagine your nervous system is a glass of water, not a metaphor about being half full or half empty. I mean a literal glass filled to a specific level, and every single thing that happens to you during a day either adds to that glass or it doesn't. A difficult email, someone's tone in a conversation, a plan that changed, a quiet moment where you had to smile and say you're fine, a noise that irritated you, a thought you had about yourself at 2 in the afternoon that you immediately suppressed. Each of these things adds a drop, just a drop. But you and I both know that by a certain point in most days, your glass isn't a glass anymore. It's a surface tension problem. It is full to the absolute edge. And you are walking very carefully, very deliberately, trying not to spill, and everyone around you is just talking normally, just existing normally, bumping into furniture, laughing loudly, and you are trying, with everything you have, not to overflow. And the people who seem unbothered, they are not carrying less water. They just learned where the drain is. That is the entire secret. Not a technique, not a mindset, a drain. And we are going to find yours tonight. But before we do, I need to earn the right to show it to you. Because you've been here before. You've read something or watched something or listened to something that promised to help. And it gave you information, good information probably. And you tried to apply it for about 4 days and then stop. Not because you're lazy, not because you don't care, but because it was treating the symptom instead of the source. And you are smart enough to sense that difference even when you can't articulate it. So I am not going to give you information tonight. I am going to give you a mirror. And you are going to recognize yourself in it. And that recognition, that specific kind of being seen, is the thing that actually makes change possible. Not information, recognition. So let me see you. You are someone who reads rooms automatically, without deciding to. You walk into a space, and within 30 seconds, you have already cataloged who is tense, who is performing happiness, who is about to say something that will make things awkward, and where the exit is emotionally if things go sideways. You did not learn this skill on purpose. You developed it because at some point in your life, reading rooms correctly had consequences. Not reading rooms correctly had worse ones. And so your nervous system got very, very good at it. So good that it now does it constantly, even when there are no consequences, even when you are safe, even when you are with people who love you. Your system doesn't know the difference between then and now. It just knows scan, assess, adapt. That scanning costs energy. Enormous, invisible, unacknowledged energy. And you do it all day, every single day. And then someone asks why you seem tired, And you say you don't know, because how do you explain that you have been working since you walked in the door, just not in any way that shows? There is a name for this: hypervigilance. Not the clinical, dramatic version you might have heard about in trauma documentaries. The quiet, functional, high-achieving version that looks from the outside like conscientiousness, like emotional intelligence, like being a good friend, like being reliable, like being perceptive, like being the person everyone comes to because you always seem to know what someone needs before they ask. Because of course you do. You have been studying people your entire life out of a very understandable, very human need to feel safe. But here is what hypervigilance does to a body. It keeps the alarm on, not blaring, not dramatic, just on. A low hum, a readiness, a baseline level of preparation that never fully drops, even at night, even in the bath, even in the middle of a conversation you're enjoying. Some part of you is always slightly braced, and braced is a physical state. Braced means your cortisol is slightly elevated. Braced means your jaw is slightly tight. Braced means your breathing is slightly shallower than it could be. Braced means you are spending metabolic energy on threat detection, even when the only threat in the room is the possibility that someone might be in a bad mood. And I want you to notice something. Notice whether, even as you're watching this right now, some part of your body is slightly tense. A shoulder, your stomach, the place where your neck meets your skull. Notice it without judging it. Because that tension is not a flaw. That tension is loyalty. Your body being loyal to a version of the world it learned a long time ago, a version where staying ready was the smartest thing you could do. The problem is that loyalty is costing you everything. Everything you want, the calm, the groundedness, the quality of being unmoved that other people seem to have, the thing that made you click on this video tonight. It is all on the other side of your body learning that it is allowed to stop being loyal to that old version of the world. That it is safe now to put down the readiness, that the alarm can go off, that you will be okay. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. Because before the drain, you need to understand the faucet. You need to understand exactly what is filling the glass. And this is where most content loses you, because it talks about stress and triggers in a way that is accurate, but not specific, not personal, not precise enough to feel true. So let me be precise. The glass is being filled not primarily by the things that happen to you. It is being filled primarily by what you do with those things inside your own mind in the 3 to 45 minutes after they happen. Someone says something slightly off to you in a meeting. The thing itself takes 3 seconds. But then your mind takes that 3-second event and begins a process. It replays it. It examines it from multiple angles. It wonders what they meant, what you should have said, what it says about how they see you, whether it's going to come up again, whether you should address it or let it go, what letting it go will cost you, what addressing it will cost you, and whether the fact that you're spending this much time on it means something is wrong with you. And that process takes, let us be conservative, 20 minutes. And in those 20 minutes, your body is producing a stress response to something that is no longer happening. Your cortisol is responding to a memory of 3 seconds, as though those 3 seconds are still occurring. You are living inside a loop. And the loop is the faucet, not the event, the loop. The unbothered people you admire have shorter loops. Not absent, shorter. They do not feel less. They return to baseline faster. That is the entire difference. It is not personality. It is not some innate quality they were born with. It is a skill that can be trained, and it can be trained because the brain is not a fixed thing. It is a prediction machine, and prediction machines can be updated. They can be given new data. They can learn that the alarm does not need to stay on as long as it used to. And over time, they will begin to turn it off sooner, and you will feel what the unbothered feel, not because you became a different person, but because your nervous system accepted a new operating assumption about the world. But here is why everything you've tried hasn't worked. Because you have been trying to solve this at the level of thought. You have been trying to think your way out of a state that lives below thought. You have told yourself to let things go. You have told yourself not to care. You have done the breathing exercise once and thought calm thoughts at yourself and decided you were fine. And then 3 hours later, something small happened and the loop started again, and you concluded, quietly, privately, that you are just this way, that this is just who you are, that some people are naturally unbothered and you are naturally not. And that is simply the truth you must accept. That conclusion is incorrect. But it is not irrational. It makes perfect sense that you reached it, because the tools you were given were tools designed for a different problem. Telling yourself to calm down is a cortical intervention for a subcortical state. You are trying to reason with a part of your brain that does not process language. The part of your brain that runs the alarm, the amygdala, the threat detection system, it does not respond to thoughts. It responds to signals, physical signals, signals from your body that tell it the coast is clear. You can lower the readiness now. The signals it is waiting for are things like a slow exhale, a loosened jaw, eye contact that lingers without tension, a body that stops bracing. These are the signals that say safe. And when the amygdala receives enough of them consistently, over time, it updates its model. It begins to assume safety instead of threat. It starts leaving the alarm off by default instead of on. That is what the Unbothered have trained their systems to do. And now I am going to show you how to do it. I want to give you 4 things tonight. Not habits, not routines. 4 specific internal moves. And I want to give them names you'll actually remember. Names that sound like something you'd write in your notes app at midnight. Because that's when these things tend to matter. The names are the glass check, the loop catch, the signal send, and the story drop. And I want to walk you through each one slowly, because slow is the only speed that actually reaches the part of you that needs to receive this. The first one is the glass check. Once a day, just once, you stop and you ask your body honestly, how full is the glass right now? Not your mind, your body. You don't think about what happened today and decide whether it warrants stress. You feel into your physical state and you notice what you find. The jaw, the shoulders, the stomach, the quality of your breathing. You are not trying to fix anything. You are not trying to relax. You are just observing. You are a scientist taking a reading. Full half, nearly empty. That's all. The reason this works is subtle and important. Hypervigilance, by definition, is outward, focused. It is always scanning the environment for information. The glass check deliberately redirects that scanner inward. And the moment you turn your attention to your own physical state, you begin to regulate it, not by force, by attention. Attention to the body is itself a signal to the nervous system that you are safe enough to look inward, and that signal begins to lower the readiness. You are not doing anything to calm down. You are simply looking at yourself, and that looking is the act. Do this once a day, not more. More makes it a chore. Once makes it a practice. The second one is the loop catch. This one requires honesty. At some point today, something happened, something small, something that rationally should not still be taking up space, but it is. And your mind is either replaying it or rehearsing a future version of it. The loop catch is simply the act of noticing, with specificity, how long the loop has been running. Not judging it, not stopping it. Noticing. You say to yourself, internally, something happened 40 minutes ago, and I have been in a loop about it for 35 of those minutes. That's it. The reason this matters is that the loop feeds on inattention. It runs under the surface and fills the glass without you realizing what's happening. The moment you name it, you bring it above the surface. And above the surface, you have a choice. Below the surface, you don't. You don't need to stop the loop. You need to see it. Seeing it is enough. The loop cannot survive being fully seen. The third one is the signal send. This is a physical practice, and I need you to take it seriously because it is going to sound too simple. It is not too simple. It is precisely as complex as it needs to be, which is not very. The signal send is a long, slow exhale longer than you think. 6, 8, 10 seconds out. And while you exhale, you deliberately, consciously soften one thing, just one. The jaw. Or the place where your tongue is pressing against the roof of your mouth. Or the subtle muscular holding in your upper chest. You soften one thing, and you breathe out and you repeat this once. Just once. Not 10 times. Once. What is happening physiologically is this: the long exhale activates your parasympathetic nervous system. This is not a metaphor. This is a mechanical fact about your vagus nerve. The exhale is longer than the inhale, the heart rate slows, the vagus nerve signals the brain there is no emergency. The amygdala receives that signal, and the alarm gets, fractionally, quieter. You will not feel dramatically calmer. You will feel slightly less braced. That is the goal. Slightly less braced repeatedly, consistently, is how the baseline changes. Not one dramatic breakthrough. Incremental updates to what your nervous system considers normal. You are reprogramming the prediction machine one exhale at a time. The fourth one is the story drop. This is the most difficult one and the most important one and the one that requires the most compassion for yourself. So I want to approach it carefully. When something happens to you, your brain does not experience the raw event. It experiences a story about the event. Instantly, automatically, before you've even consciously processed what happened. Your brain has already begun constructing a narrative. And the narrative is not neutral. The narrative is shaped by every previous experience your brain has cataloged as similar, and it is shaped by your deepest beliefs about yourself and the world. And it is shaped by your current glass level, because a full glass interprets events very differently than a glass with room in it. So when someone is short with you, the raw event is their tone was clipped. The story is they are disappointed in me, or I did something wrong, or they don't respect me, or I need to fix this, or I am too much, or I am not enough. And you then spend the next 20 minutes in the loop not with the event, but with the story. A story your brain wrote in under a second and that you have been treating as fact. The story drop is not about telling yourself a more positive story. Positive reframing is a thought-level intervention, and we already know those don't reach where we need to go. The story drop is about doing something much more precise. Identifying the specific phrase your brain is using to run the story, and then setting that phrase down just for now. Not forever, just for now. The phrase might be, I always do this, or they think less of me now, or something is wrong with me, or I can't handle things the way other people can. And you find that phrase, the core sentence the loop is running on, and you say to it, internally, I hear you. I know you are trying to protect me. I'm going to set you down for the next hour. I'm not getting rid of you. I'm just putting you down. And then you do something physical. You go get water. You go outside for 60 seconds. You change rooms. Because your body needs a context shift to match the internal one. The mind can drop a story, but the body is still in the room where the story started, and the body will keep signaling the old state until the environment changes even slightly. Set the story down. Change rooms. Let the nervous system follow. These 4 moves, the glass check, the loop catch, the signal send, the story drop, are not a system. You do not do them in sequence. You do not complete them. You reach for whichever one is available in the moment you need it. And you will forget to do them most of the time, and that is fine, because the goal is not consistency in the behavior. The goal is the gradual accumulation of experiences in which your nervous system felt something shift, and each time it shifts, even slightly, the brain files that experience as data. The alarm came on and it was manageable, and I brought it down and I was okay. And that data, filed repeatedly, is how the prediction machine begins to predict something different, something closer to safe, something closer to okay. Something that, from the outside, looks very much like Unbothered. But I want to tell you something about what Unbothered actually looks like from the inside, because I think you have a picture of it that isn't quite right, and I want to correct it gently. Being unbothered does not mean being blank. It does not mean being emotionally unavailable. It does not mean you don't feel things, and it does not mean nothing gets to you. And it does not mean you float above experience in some enviable, frictionless way. The people who seem unbothered still feel. They still have bad days. They still have moments where something lands wrong and the loop wants to start. The difference is not that the water doesn't rise. The difference is that they know where the drain is, and they use it, and they have used it enough times that they trust it will work, and that trust, that bone deep knowledge that they can return to themselves, is what reads from the outside as calm. It is not serenity. It is confidence in one's own return, and that confidence is available to you. Not because you will suddenly become a different kind of person, but because you will accumulate enough returns that you begin to believe you are a person who returns. That is the shift, not a personality change. A belief change about one specific thing, your own capacity to come back to yourself. And I want to say something about why you might have been struggling to believe that until now. I want to say it carefully because I don't want to diagnose you or reduce you to a category. But I have a sense, based on everything we've talked about tonight, that you learned very early in your life to prioritize other people's states above your own, that you became good at managing environments, that you learned to make yourself smaller or more palatable, or more useful or less visible, or some specific configuration of all of these things, and that it worked. It was a brilliant adaptation. It kept you safe and connected and functional, and the cost was that you learned to treat your own internal state as less important than everything external to you. And so returning to yourself is not a skill that comes naturally to you, not because you're incapable, because you were never given permission to practice it. Tonight I am giving you that permission. The unbothered quality you are looking for is not a performance. It is not something you project. It is something other people sense in you when your glass has room in it, when you are not bracing, when you are not running loops, when your system is in return instead of readiness. It creates a specific quality of presence. Something in your eyes settles, something in your voice slows slightly, something in the way you hold the space around you says, I am not afraid of what's about to happen. And people feel that. They don't know what they're feeling, but they feel it and they lean toward it, and they attribute to you all kinds of things: wisdom, confidence, groundedness, maturity, mystery. When actually what they are sensing is simply this: a person who has learned to lower the alarm, a person whose glass has a drain in it, a person who has practiced returning to themselves enough times that returning is no longer an effort. That is all it is. And it is entirely possible for you. Not someday, not after you fix the other things first. Not when your circumstances are better or your life is calmer or you have more time or you feel ready. Now, with the glass exactly as full as it currently is, with the loops you are currently running, with the body you are currently in, the slightly tense jaw, and the shallow breathing, and the quiet hum of readiness that has been running longer than you can remember. You start with the glass exactly as it is. You take one reading. You catch one loop. You send one signal. You drop one story. And you notice, however slightly, that you came back, that you were not destroyed by the thing, that the alarm went off and you managed it and you returned. And you file that. Your brain files that. And the next time, the prediction will be slightly more towards safe, and slightly more after that. And after enough time, the default will change. The baseline will change. And someone will say to you, someday, probably in a quiet moment, they will say, how do you stay so calm? And you will think of the glass. You will think of the drain. And you will smile, not because you know a secret, but because you know it is not a secret at all. It is just practice. Patient, private, unglamorous practice. The kind that happens in the small hours, in the quiet moments, in the seconds between things when no one is watching. The kind that looks, from the outside, exactly like knowing something other people don't. You don't need to become someone else. You need to return to yourself. That's what this always was. Not a transformation, a homecoming, and you've been finding your way home for longer than you know. The glass is not a problem to be solved. It is a signal to be heard. And tonight, for the first time, you heard it. That's enough. That is quietly everything. And here is something I want to leave you with before you sleep tonight. Picture someone moving through a crowded room, not performing composure, not suppressing anything, not managing themselves tightly, just moving. And the room sort of parts around them. Not because they demand it, not because they're intimidating, but because something in the way they occupy their own body says, I know exactly where I am, and I am okay with it. That quality, that groundedness, is not a mystery. It is not charisma. It is not luck. It is just a nervous system that has been given enough evidence, enough times, that the world is generally manageable. A glass that has been given a drain. A person who has learned to return. That person is not special. That person just practiced one specific thing long enough that it became their default. And that person could be you, not the performance of that person. The actual version. The version that costs nothing. The version that is already there, underneath the readiness, underneath the scanning, underneath the loyalty to an old version of the world that kept you safe once and has been running ever since on inertia. The version that exhales, and trusts, and returns. Now, about what happens when the returning fails. When you have done everything right and the glass overflows anyway, and not quietly, not privately, but in front of someone, and you said something you regret or shut down in a way that confused someone you love or reacted in a way that felt like proof of the old belief about yourself. That moment, what it costs you, what it means about you, and how to move through it without turning the regret into another loop. That is what we are doing next. Because the hardest part of becoming unbothered is not the calm. It is what you do on the days when the calm completely breaks.